Hello guys, I'm Cambridge English teacher Rory, or Cambridge Rory, from studentlanguages.com, and in today's video I'm going to be critiquing a CPE essay. So here is the question. It's on this website that you can see at the top here, cpesamplewritings.blogspot.com, and I'm sorry it's a bit blurry. It's not my website and I don't have access to the original document. And to be honest, I don't want to write out the whole question, because it's a long question, as you can see. But what I will be doing is reading through this question and then marking a student's essay that they've written in response to this question. So let's get started. It says, read the two texts below. Write an essay summarising and evaluating the key points from both texts. Use your own words throughout as far as possible, and include your own ideas in your answer. Write your answer in 240 to 280 words. Okay, so if I was doing this, I would underline parts of that question. For example, summarising, evaluating. Those are the two main things. So the first one here says unsustainable tourism. We are increasingly familiar with some of the worst effects of unthinking, unmanaged, unsustainable tourism. So I'll read it out to you just in case you can't see it very well. Again, from the beginning, we are increasingly familiar with some of the worst effects of unthinking, unmanaged, unsustainable tourism. Previously undeveloped coastal villages that have become sprawling, charmless towns, their seas poisoned by sewage, denuded of wildlife, their beaches stained with litter and tubes of sun cream, and historic towns, their streets now choked with traffic, their temples, churches and cathedrals seemingly reduced to a backdrop for holiday snaps that proclaim "been there, done that." Less appreciated perhaps is the social dislocation unsustainable tourism can cause. Once cohesive communities disrupted as the holiday industry replaces old crafts, turning fishermen into tour boat operators and farmers into fast food store waiters or hotel cleaners. Okay. Criticism of the tourism industry. This is the second text. Although its strongest critics view the tourism industry as a rapacious predator, moving on to fresh conquests after one environment has been spoiled, and forever fueling the desires of holidaymakers with the prospect of a new paradise that must be enjoyed before it's gone. There are many within the industry who reject the claim. They are at least partly right. There are examples where the travel trade is doing better, of course. Reforming initiatives often come after the damage has been done, and in some cases for public relations purposes rather than from a commitment to sustainability. Okay, so again we need to summarise and evaluate the key points from both texts. Okay, so, and include our own answers in our answers. So let's have a look at my students' answer, and it says this essay was written by and I will mark it and I will put corrections as we go through. So, tourism is in a state of flux. A state of flux. Good, less common vocabulary here. So immediately, right, I'm also going to add stuff to the marking scale, which is how the examiners mark your scale. If we look on the Cambridge English website, we can see here you have 4 criteria: content, communicative achievement, organisation and language. And they mark it from 0 to 5, 5 being the best, 0 being the worst. And if you go to this web link at the top of the page here, you'll be able to see this. It's really useful to know and to understand it for your writings. So back to here, I was going to add language. Okay, less common words and phrases used. For example, state of flux. The standard of living has been rising exponentially, and dream destinations can be affordable for every pocket. Okay, maybe I would be more specific and say the standard of living has been rising exponentially. Where? In maybe it would be good to say in parts of the world, for example, because I'm not sure if it is true that it's been rising exponentially everywhere. So we could say in certain parts of the world here, to be more specific. And dream destinations can be affordable for every pocket. Okay, again, it doesn't matter whether your ideas are true or not. The examiners don't mark you on that. My immediate thoughts were dream destination, not necessarily, but yeah, okay. Your ideas actually don't matter as much as the language itself, so, and the way it's put together. So, however, the extent of the damage caused by the influx of tourists cannot be underestimated. Okay, good. Good first paragraph. What we can also do now is we can just check and see if it's within the 240 to 280 word limit. Tools, word count 417 words, so it's considerably longer, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if you can. Well, thing is, if it's so long, the examiner might be thinking there's information here which isn't appropriate or isn't necessary, and so you might get marked down on that if that is the case. Because I suppose part of the challenge is to try and put all your ideas and views across and support them within the word limit range. So if they see it's a lot longer, like this is, they might mark you down. And I might make a note of that actually, so I remember for later. The writing goes over. Yeah. Keep an eye on it, see if everything's relevant. So the author of the first text points out articulately on the detrimental effects of unmanageable tourism. I wouldn't say on here, just he or she points out articulately the detrimental, because we point something out, point out something. Points out articulately, it's a good word, the detrimental effects of unmanageable tourism. Add articulately down here. The latest economic imbroglio, that's a good word, imbroglio, has struck anyone indiscriminately, and it has decimated the number of available jobs. Has struck anyone. It's not right to use anyone here. You could use has struck everyone, maybe, or many people. I'm not sure exactly what you mean. I suppose you mean has struck anyone. Okay, has struck anyone indiscriminately. Yeah, okay, well maybe not everyone then, but also not anyone. I would just say people. Or you could think of a better word for people. Or has struck indiscriminately around the world, for example. And it has decimated the number of available jobs. Okay. Again, I would maybe say sort of where, in globally, for example, just make it a bit clearer. So I think already for communicative achievement, is this okay? So the author. Just want to remind myself this is actually what this first author says, or if this is your own idea. I don't think it's your idea because this is all about tourism. So the writer could be more specific at times, especially when referring to people. Which people? Which people and where? Okay, says made a number of available jobs. Where? Everywhere? Or in specific places? Previously charming and peaceful villages have transformed into modern-looking places. Gradually, the sandy beaches are slowly filled with litter. Yeah, if you say gradually, I don't think you need to say slowly. Gradually is kind of like saying a steady pace. A steady, slow pace, I suppose, it makes sense, but I feel like you could just remove slowly and say gradually that sandy beaches are filled with litter. Could also say maybe are becoming filled. Show that it's an ongoing process. Or are being filled. And I think it's possible to use nicer words here. Rather than filled with litter, you could say sort of becoming consumed or being... I think consumed is a nice word. Sandy beaches are previously charming peaceful villages transformed into modern-looking places. And maybe their sandy beaches, the ones from these villages, or if it's not their ones in particular, you could remove the and just say sandy villages in general are becoming consumed. Yeah, I'd probably remove slowly. It sounds better, I think, just say that gradually sandy beaches are becoming consumed with litter. While incongruous, fancy glass towers, good word, incongruous. Let's add that down to the bottom. And I'll say here there are also parts which where the vocabulary could be more elaborate. For example, this one about consumed and filled. While incongruous, fancy glass towers are mushrooming, nice, at the preternatural speed. The sleepy, quaint, historical buildings are silently going into utter despair. Okay, again, I probably wouldn't say the. I would just say sleep in general. So while incongruous, fancy glass towers are mushrooming in general, sleepy, quaint, historical buildings are silently going into utter disrepair. Okay. Okay, nice. These are good words as well. Utter disrepair, it's good. And less common. It's probably I would say that it's probably a little bit informal, some of this language, for an essay. Slightly informal and personal. It's like the type of language you might talk to someone about or write in a review or something rather than in an essay. It's not quite neutral enough. And this is a good example of this. Utter disrepair. Utter is a word that we would normally speak in a conversation with somebody rather than write in an essay. So it has a bit too much emotion involved. These aforementioned negative dominant images. I'll make a note here as well. These aforementioned negative dominant images are the eloquent reminder of the strong measures we have to implement. Interesting. Interesting use of the word eloquent. I'm not sure whether I think we could probably use a better word than eloquent here. The strong measures we have to implement. Traditional customs and crafts are often seen as a mere source of entertainment the correction shows us normally say from the standpoint of somebody. From the standpoint of well-off holidaymakers. Okay. Nevertheless, undeveloped coastal villages Okay, so that's good because it's talking about holidaymakers and tourists. I'm not sure whether I want to try and cut some of it down. I don't know how long it took the student to write this, but there is a time limit in the exam, and so if we need to cut it down, I'd maybe say this, for example. This sentence is not necessarily, or it's not obviously connected with tourism. You could make it more obviously connected with tourism, but because it's not, that would probably be one that I would remove. I also think that this sentence it's not really, it doesn't really connect well with the next sentence. So about there being economic imbroglio, it decimated the number of available jobs, but then the next sentence we're talking about villages transforming, right? So I suppose it depends exactly what you mean by economic imbroglio. I actually thought in my mind that you were referring, probably because of the current day that we're now in, you were referring to the coronavirus situation, but now I realise maybe you're not. Anyway, I think it should be tied better, I think, or at least made more explicit what you're talking about here. So, or removed from the paragraph entirely. Again, so it's about being more specific in what you mean. So the author could tie ideas together better on a paragraph level, on an individual paragraph level, which means within a paragraph, by more specific language, or removing potential irrelevancies. Again, it's difficult for me to know whether it's relevant or not because it's not. I don't understand exactly what you're talking about when you say this. So back to here. So I think we got to here. Nevertheless, undeveloped coastal villages embrace the notion of mass tourism and its dire consequences for socio-economic reason. Yeah, they probably don't embrace these dire consequences knowingly. So maybe we could say, and maybe we could make that obvious, and unknowingly. Its dire consequences. Good word, dire, for the solely for economic reasons would be better. And its dire consequences solely for economic reasons, because it's more than one, I think. Many economic reasons. Or purposes. The most deprived local communities have no other option but to adapt themselves to the whims of wealthy tourists and absorb a new way of life. Okay. Maybe you do mean that they do it knowingly, although I think if they knew that these were the consequences, and that there would be bad economic consequences, they probably wouldn't do it, I guess. Because maybe it partly comes down to the word embrace, because embrace means to sort of except in a positive way, whereas they are not doing it in a positive way. Adapt to the whims of wealthy tourists and absorb a new way of life. Fishermen might become scuba diving instructors. Housewives may come into waitresses. Yes, may not come into, but turn into would be better, for example. Again, though, this sort of turn into, it's a bit like a phrasal verb, and it's too informal for an essay. Excuse me. So you could actually, probably the best thing would be to say become waitresses, because become is not a phrasal verb. So I'll make a note here. Phrasal verbs are too informal for an essay. I'll add that down here. For example, disrepair and the use of phrasal verbs. Okay. The writer of the second passage heavily criticizes the travel industry. Okay, so let's have a look then and see if what we were supposed to do is to summarize and evaluate. So let's have a look at this first one again and see if he's done that appropriately. We are increasingly familiar with the Okay. Okay, yeah, it seems like it does summarize that pretty well, I'd say. Evaluating. Well, it sounds like the author is largely in agreement with what this says. Yeah, so I'd say that's okay. Then, the writer of the second passage heavily criticizes the travel industry. Because it's industry. I should say the travel industry. Never have an entrepreneur deemed sustainability as an important subject before. Never have, because you say have, it would be better to say entrepreneurs, plural. Deemed sustainability as an important subject before. Okay, nice. It's good to try and use this type of language. Even if you don't get it completely correct, more difficult verb tenses and grammatical structures are good to try and use. Conversation goals have not just have come. So we've got a few mistakes here with the articles. So like initially I'm thinking, well, it's not a 5 because there's some mistakes and things, so maybe 2, 3. I'm going to say 3 for now. This again, let's say 3 and 3. I feel like a stricter examiner might give them 2s. And you can also compare it to what we've got here. Minor irrelevances or omissions may be present. Okay, that's true. Target reader is on the whole informed. Okay, that's true. So yeah, I think it fits the 3 for content. Uses the conventions of communicative tasks with sufficient flexibility to communicate complex ideas in an effective way, holding the target reader's attention with ease, fulfilling all communicative purposes. Yeah, okay, I think it's largely doing that on the whole. So yeah, at the moment it's looking like 3. I'll carry on and come back to that later. Conversation goals have come a long way from government's promotion to education. From government's promotion to education. Conversation goals have come a long way. From government's promotion. You mean promotion of education? Government's promotion. I think you mean of education. I'm not sure exactly. And this is the thing, actually. There has been times here where I'm not actually understanding fully what you mean. And that will be important in especially communicative achievement. There are bits where I'm stumbling and not fully grasping the content and concepts, which is why I'm going to knock it down to 2. But there are rooms for development, and I'll make a note about this as well. There are parts of the answer which are not entirely clear and obvious. What does the author actually mean? What are they saying? Today, the synergy between environment protection, we normally say actually environmental protection, and travel industry and the travel industry appears to work really well. Synergy is a good word. A verdant entrepreneur. Interesting. Well, that's in a different thing. I don't know anyway. A verdant entrepreneur should conversational goals into account prior to take their. A verdant entrepreneur should conversational goals into account prior to take their tentative steps in the tourism sector. Again, I'm not sure exactly what this means. I think maybe it means a verdant entrepreneur should take conversational goals, or just conversations maybe, into account prior to their tentative steps in the tourism sector. You could say prior to taking, again, but now we said take here. You could also just say prior to their tentative steps in the tourism sector, whatever they may be. How are they stepping? But I presume what you mean is actions. Take conversation into account before acting. So this sentence now kind of says that should take conversational goals into account prior to their tentative steps in the tourism sector. Yeah. Are they tentative steps? That's subjective, I would say. Is that what this person says here? Let's remind ourselves. Examples of travel traders doing better. Of course, reforming initiatives often come after the damage has been done, in some cases for public relations purposes rather than for commitment to sustainability. I don't know if you are saying that that's what the text says, or if this is what you think again. Because it's like a recommendation, they should do this, so I presume it's what you're saying. And if it's what you're saying, then maybe it would be better to say, take conversational goals into account prior to taking. Again, yes, okay, we could say taking. And I would remove there and just say prior to taking tentative steps, and then you're also recommending tentative steps in the tourism sector for everybody. Notwithstanding the unwavering commitment to environmental protection. Good, here we have it. Here we don't have environmental, but here we do, so that's good. So maybe this is just what we would call a slip, which is a one-time mistake rather than a regular mistake, which would be an error. And that distinction is important for examiners. So, notwithstanding the unwavering commitment of environmental protection, ticking bucket lists are still often the single reason behind the inclination of travel. Okay. We should bear in mind, often we actually say inclination to. I think it's better. The inclination to travel. I'm inclined to do something. We should bear in mind that the downright arrogant concept of been there and done that, we should say, can perpetuate. And actually you could put this all in the brackets. Been there, done that. Because that's a phrase, and that is the same phrase that they use here, I think. No? been... I'm sure I read it somewhere. Anyway, been there, done that, can perpetuate. Because I've been there, done that, can perpetuate are note of current interference with nature. Okay, so I think that as I'm looking through the text, I can see there are enough language things that are going to make me knock it down to a 2. Been there, done that. And actually, we don't say and in this phrase, just been there, done that. Downright arrogant concept of been there, done that can perpetuate our current interference with nature. We have to minimize our actions, strive to leave everything intact. Yep, I would remove the comma and say and, because it's 2 things, and strive to leave everything intact. Yes, maybe I wouldn't say we, because again, we is quite, unless that's what this person is saying again. Which I think it's the author's opinion. So again, I wouldn't say we. I would just say there is a need to minimize or something like this, because we is a little bit personal for an essay. Although ecotourism can be the right contender for solving this burning matter, and delay and inappropriate response overshadow the nimbus of this brilliant idea. Okay. Okay. When you say this, it kind of sounds a little bit like it might be the only right contender, but maybe we could make that one of the right contenders, or a good contender for solving, maybe better. Anyway, in conclusion, tourism has an essential role to play in the global economy. How we can take a balance between conservation and business will remain an eternal question. Conversely, I am inclined to believe that environmental protection should be given higher priority. Otherwise, we are going to cross the Rubicon. Okay, so let's have a think about whether this paragraph answers the summary and evaluating of this second text. So it's firstly talking about tourism being a rapacious predator, damaging the environment. Okay, it has talked about that. Fueling desires of holidaymakers. He says they're at least partly right. And that these solutions are often too late. And it's done for public relations rather than for sustainability, which I assume means the environment. It's a bit difficult for me to know whether these are your ideas or the ideas of the author, or the ideas of the person who wrote this text. Sorry, are they the author's ideas or the ideas of this person? This to me sounds like it's the author's ideas, because this isn't exactly what the other person is saying. This isn't what the text is saying. And neither is this. So I think this is the author's ideas. Okay, this is a bit more again about the text here, because we're saying that it's tourists who are driving it, their desires. Okay, arrogant concept, been there and done that. Yeah, okay. Downright arrogant. It's quite informal language, too informal for an essay, I think. We have to minimize our actions and strive. Okay, so this is back to the author's ideas again. So there's quite a lot of this paragraph which is not actually evaluating what this says here. So it's including our own ideas, but I feel like maybe there could be more evaluation of this. For example, when they say solutions are more about public relations rather than sustainability, I think that idea could be picked up a bit better. So content-wise, I think you could cut some of this out. I think you could remove some ideas, as I said, particularly with this first paragraph. And I think you could add in a bit more evaluating of the texts themselves. So some ideas could be removed while further evaluation and summary of the texts could be given. And in that case, I think that the content could go up. I feel like it's just too long for it to be this length and not to evaluate and summarize everything that's given in those texts. That combination to me makes me not want to give it a 3. So I'm going to knock that down to a 2, unfortunately. Another examiner maybe would give it a 3, but I'm going to give it a 2. This I think keep the same because there are parts which I don't understand fully. So again, I'm going to give that a 2. I'm just going to skip down to language, and again giving that a 2 because of these various points that I've already raised here. Organization, and now what we can do is have a skip over here again because it's useful. Organization, so let's have a look at 3. Text is a well-organized, coherent whole using a variety of cohesive devices and organizational patterns with flexibility. So I would say it's well-organized. It has clear paragraphs, the first one discussing the first text, the second one discussing the second text. So it is well-organized. Coherent whole, I didn't find it completely coherent because there are parts which I don't understand, and it's a bit difficult for me to know whether it's the author's points or it's a summary of the text. And so I think that could be improved to make it more coherent using a variety of cohesive devices and organizational patterns. So cohesive devices and organizational patterns. Also on an individual paragraph level, the building up. So I remember thinking that maybe it was this paragraph wasn't completely relevant, and so the overall structure and building of that paragraph to its main idea I think could be improved upon. But just to look more specifically at cohesive devices and organizational patterns, we have some of those words like gradually, for example, while, nevertheless. Okay, so that's good. So that seems good to me. So well organized, I was thinking, yes, okay, well, that's fine. Coherent whole, maybe not quite fine. Or cohesive devices and organizational patterns with flexibility, I'd say that's fine as well. So we can have a look at 1 quickly to give relevance. I'm wondering whether to give it a 3 or not. Text is well organized and coherent, uses a variety of cohesive devices and organizations, which generally good effects. Yes, okay, so it hits those. This is a good word here, converse as well. So okay, so I'm going to give it a 3 for organization. My notes. Okay, well I've just kind of spoke through them, but I will write some out anyway. The text on the whole is well organized on an individual paragraph level. The overall points, or the overall points could be clearer, or the overall points could be made stronger through better development of ideas throughout the individual paragraph, which I said at the beginning. I think it could also be made more coherent for that reason as well. Range of organizational organizational patterns and cohesive devices can be found throughout the essay writing. Okay, I feel like maybe I said something else about this organisation thing earlier. I can't remember exactly what it is. And my brain is getting a little bit tired now. It's quite intense work, this. But I think it more or less come to an end. So I think I said 2, 2, 3, 2, which would be 6, 9, 9 out of 20. You need 12 out of 20, so you need to get these 3 categories up to 3s in order to pass. That's what I explain here. So I hope you found that useful. And yeah, just go back through this video, listen to what I'm saying, and try to work on the things that I've mentioned. Yeah, and hopefully it won't be too difficult to knock those up, a few of these categories up to 3, and get them to be a passing level. Okay, thank you. I've been Cambridge Rory, or Cambridge English Teacher Rory from studentlanguages.com. Goodbye.